Politeness is a beautiful deception. It carries the appearance of compassion and the sensation of morality. But in the wrong hands or during the wrong moments, it becomes a weapon not against them, but against you. Machiavelli recognized this long ago. He didn't oppose civility, he rejected civility misapplied. To him, certain situations demand more than courtesy. Because in those instances, politeness doesn't just signal fragility, it makes you vulnerable. When used indiscriminately, politeness conveys a dangerous message. I value being approved of more than being respected. I prefer harmony even at the expense of my inner voice. I'd rather maintain appearances than claim control. And the moment manipulators, predators, or status chasers pick up on that, they don't admire it, they exploit it. Machiavelli would advise there are times when etiquette must be set aside, when pleasantry, smiles, and soft speech must be replaced, when your thank you becomes silence, when your sorry becomes that's your concern, when the handshake you offer becomes withheld, not as an act of cruelty, but as an awakening. Let's begin with the first of 5 scenarios where being polite becomes a disadvantage when someone oversteps a boundary you never opened. There are individuals who don't request power, they probe for it. They nudge. They subtly intrude. They say things that toe the line of inappropriateness. They inch closer than necessary. They talk over you and glare as if you've interrupted them. And in response, what do most do? They smile through it. They give a hesitant laugh. They try to keep the energy light. They say, "Oh, no worries. It's really fine," or "Haha, maybe I'm just overreacting." Machiavelli would recognize this as a decisive juncture, because this right here is their assessment moment. If you react with courtesy, you've revealed something irreversible. You'd rather maintain ease than demand space. You seek approval over respect. And from that point forward, they won't see you as an equal, but as someone to manage. His counsel: reverse the power play. No escalation, no debate. Just icy clarity. Meet their gaze. Say, "That's not acceptable." Or, "You didn't have my consent." Or say nothing. Let stillness spread. Then remove yourself. The silence you leave behind will reverberate louder than words ever could, and the message will land, "I'm not to be played with." Then there's the case of weaponized apologies. Not every apology is an admission of fault. Some are a calculated means to lower your defenses. Pay attention, they cross the line and instantly say they're sorry, but their tone is hollow. Their remorse is staged. They don't seek forgiveness out of regret, they expect it on demand. They want your compassion like a switch they control, and you, tethered to politeness, feel the weight. You don't want to appear resentful. You don't want to seem unforgiving. So you reply, "It's okay." You say, "I understand." You say, "I forgive you." But what you're truly saying is, you're free to repeat it. You can start fresh anytime just by pretending to feel regret. You decide when healing begins. Machiavelli would dismantle that instinct without hesitation. He'd tell you there's no honor in excusing someone who manipulates your need to appear gracious. You don't owe comfort simply because someone said sorry. You're under no obligation to accept every apology. You aren't required to ease the path for those who made yours harder. Instead, take a pause. Let their apology land and stay there. Say nothing, or simply respond with, "I hear you," or "Thanks for saying that." But don't shift your stance. That isn't bitterness, that's authority. And for a manipulator, the worst fear is facing someone who can't be soothed into submission. Now consider another pattern: the eternal victim. You know the type. Every story they share casts them as both the hero and the harmed. They're always being wronged, excluded, misunderstood. And when they speak to you, they're not looking for honesty. They want your sympathy, your affirmation. And in the name of politeness, you oblige. You nod along. You echo their sentiments. You say, "That's awful. You don't deserve that." Before you realize it, you have been absorbed into their narrative. But in reality, they're not just venting, they're feeding on your tolerance, your emotional bandwidth, your patience, and without knowing, you become their emotional caretaker. Machiavelli would never entertain this imbalance. He'd spot it immediately for what it is: emotional exploitation. He'd detach. He'd interrupt the pattern. He'd ask, "Why do these things always seem to happen to you? What part did you play?" Or he'd remain silent and steer the conversation elsewhere. This kind of cold break short-circuits their loop. They can't thrive in silence. They can't ensnare someone who won't engage. These are only the first three examples where unchecked politeness doesn't protect you. It betrays you. It invites intrusion where boundaries should exist. It signals availability to those who haven't earned access. But Machiavelli's approach was never about being hostile. It was about being deliberate. When he stripped politeness from a situation, it was like removing air from a flame. The chaos faded. The manipulation halted. The false remorse vanished. He didn't shout. He wasn't harsh. He simply replaced performance with presence. Many will insist that politeness is always the noble route, but Machiavelli saw through that illusion. He understood that often courtesy isn't courage, it's fear wearing virtue's mask. And the most dangerous form of politeness, the one that's reflexive, the one where you smile not from peace, but from fear of showing fire. Politeness has become the most socially accepted form of self-abandonment, the most respectable way to surrender your power without a fight. Let's dig deeper, the fourth situation, when someone is intentionally wasting your time. There are two breeds of time wasters in the world, the unaware and the calculating. The former can be forgiven, but the latter, the ones who spin in circles, stall on answers, fill your calendar with pointless meetings, or leave you hanging to exert subtle control. These people aren't just disorganized. They're testing your endurance. They're watching to see how long you'll stay seated, how long you'll wait for them, how far you'll rearrange your priorities around their indecision. And if you react with courtesy, smiling, nodding, and telling them it's all right, take your time, you've just failed their test. You've now communicated, my time holds value only when you recognize it. To Machiavelli, that was one of the clearest signs of weakness. Why? Because once your time becomes flexible, so does your influence. And if someone realizes they can derail your progress with a simple delay, you've handed them the leash, a leash made of polite scheduling and emotional deference. Machiavelli wouldn't tolerate this. He'd interrupt. He'd cut short. He'd walk away. Not out of arrogance, but from understanding that time is the one asset you never compromise on. So what do you do when someone's wasting it on purpose? You stop grinning. You stop justifying their delay. You say, reach out when you're ready to move forward. Or even sharper, this doesn't seem urgent to you. Let's reconnect when it is. That one statement will accomplish more than a dozen follow-ups. Because now you've flipped the dynamic, you are the limited resource. And people don't disrespect what they might lose. The fifth moment comes when someone tries to dominate through subtle intimidation. This one's the trickiest to navigate. They don't yell. They don't insult you outright, but you sense it, the quiet disdain, the strategic silence, the hidden mockery. They pronounce your name with that extra edge. They hesitate before answering, just long enough to assert dominance. And in your attempt to remain courteous, you level your tone. You give a tight smile. You pretend it doesn't affect you. But inside you shrink. And the worst part, they notice. Because their control doesn't stem from words, it comes from the effect they have on you. Machiavelli knew this form of psychological warfare better than anyone. He studied the subtle enforcers. He understood that some people don't confront you to provoke, they aim just beneath the surface to challenge your self-worth. If you remain polite, they win. Because in this situation, politeness becomes passive surrender. It signals you can erode my composure as long as you keep it quiet. No, you maintain your posture. You don't need to mirror their attitude. You just need to eliminate their leverage. You strip away the emotional hook. How you remove the payoff, their audience, their advantage. When they speak with that implied superiority, you interrupt calmly with, let's stay on track. Or if you've got something to say, speak plainly. You maintain eye contact without flinching. You talk without smiling. You strip all warmth from your tone, not out of anger, but with calm detachment. That's the Machiavellian method, not overpowering with noise, but defeating with refusal. Here's what you need to grasp in every one of these 5 moments. The world expects you to remain polite. It relies on that, or shashwan. Because when you're predictable, you're easy to categorize, to steer, to manipulate. But when you start treating politeness as a calculated decision, not your automatic setting, you become something rare, someone who cannot be controlled. Let's clarify, this isn't about turning hostile, it's about becoming immovable. It's about communicating. I decide when I am gentle. You don't get that power. And when you enter a space with that mindset, everything shifts. The balance of power flips, since childhood politeness has been society's leash around your behavior. You were taught to smile when insulted, to giggle when uneasy, to apologize just for existing. Machiavelli would have snapped that leash, not for rebellion, but for liberation. So if you're ever in doubt, ask yourself, am I being polite because I genuinely want to, or because I'm scared of the outcome if I'm not? If the answer is fear, let it go. If it's instinct, refine it. If it's just routine, disrupt it. Because there's a time for courtesy and a time for ice. And only the ones who pose a threat can tell the difference. Politeness has its role, but most people misplace it. They confuse it with being ethical, decent, even righteous. But the truth is politeness is a disguise. And like any disguise, it serves a purpose until it starts to suffocate you. When you wear it for the wrong people or in the wrong situations, it doesn't safeguard your image, it weakens it. And little by little, you stop being a force. You become a cushion. Someone remembered not for their strength, but for making others feel comfortable, even when it cost you. Machiavelli wouldn't tolerate that kind of decay. He wasn't cruel by nature, he was deliberately cold when needed. Because the person who's always polite is always accessible. And the one who's always accessible eventually loses value or worse, gets used. So how do you reverse that script? Start here. Begin applying these principles to your daily life and program them into your thinking so deeply they become your norm. Step 1, redefine politeness. Most mistake politeness for things like not cutting in, not challenging opinions, letting people speak, smiling through discomfort, saying no problem when it actually is, or keeping silent just to avoid disruption. But that's not real politeness, that's emotional submission. Genuine politeness is a deliberate stance, not your default state. It holds power only when it's voluntary. If you're unable to turn it off, then it's no longer a tactic, it becomes a liability. One of Machiavelli's fundamental truths: a person commands respect only when others understand they can go cold without warning. Second, learn to control the switch from warmth to distance. There should be an unmistakable change in your energy when a boundary is crossed. Someone disrespects your time. You shift from friendly to unreadable instantly. Someone takes your kindness for granted. You stop responding. No more clarifying. No more engagement. People figure out quickly who they can tease, stall, or push around and who they can't. Success doesn't come to the most accommodating. It belongs to those who teach others how they expect to be approached. When politeness is used sparingly, it becomes a powerful cue, a sign of conscious control. It shows that your calm isn't automatic, it's chosen. Third, eliminate sorry from your reflex vocabulary. One of the clearest symptoms of unconscious politeness is over-apologizing. You say sorry for seeking clarification. You apologize when someone else causes delays. You feel the need to soften your tone even when you're speaking truth. You apologize simply for asserting your limits. Machiavelli would have uprooted that tendency entirely. Why? Because apologizing for having standards sends the same signal as having none at all. It's one thing to express regret for real harm, but most modern apologies are just disguised discomfort with confidence. And people who are firm, they're not harsh. They're dependable. They're followed. They aren't challenged. Swap sorry I can't with, that doesn't work for me. Replace sorry I'm late with, here's where we are now. Replace sorry for being direct with silence. You'll be surprised how quickly your presence changes. People avoid pushing those who don't apologize for strength. Fourth, stop fleeing from tension. Use it. Here's a truth few recognize. Oh, politeness is often a disguise for avoiding friction. Someone compliments you with a hidden jab. You force a smile. A colleague interrupts you, chuckle to brush it off. A relative crosses a boundary, you say, I know, just to keep things smooth. But Machiavelli would lean into that moment, not to escalate, but to command it. He'd say, you're attempting to steer this, that won't fly. Or if you're not finished, I'll wait, but I'm not moving until you are. Or you don't need to agree and I don't need your consent. These are the expressions of someone who doesn't lean on politeness to diffuse tension. They use calm dominance to own it. Because stillness has force. Silence speaks volumes. And when you hold your stance through the pressure, others feel it in ways a polite smile never could. Fifth, treat politeness like a strategy, not an identity. This is the transformation Machiavelli would instill in you. Stop identifying as a polite person. Become someone powerful, someone who can choose to be polite. Let your politeness carry weight. Let it be precise, deliberate, and calculated, not gentle and automatic, but tactical. Be the type of person who, when they say, "Thanks, I appreciate that," no worries. Others take note because they know it just as easily could have been, "That's unacceptable. Don't speak to me like that," or nothing at all. The man who speaks gently by default fades into the background. But the one whose politeness is intentional, he becomes the force others adjust to. You don't have to raise your voice. You don't have to create chaos. You don't need to posture to prove your strength. All you have to do is remove politeness when weakness expects it and reserve it for those who've truly earned it. That's the Machiavellian approach. And that's what makes a person unforgettable, not through volume, but through unpredictability. Politeness is a form of currency, and like any currency, its value drops when handed out too freely. Machiavelli didn't fear being disliked, he feared being disregarded. Because the core of power isn't affection, it's respect. Affection fades, but the memory of your coldness that leaves a lasting impression. Here's a truth most people never grasp, those who truly respect. You don't need you to be sweet. They need you to be clear, firm, unbending where it counts. Once you master selective politeness, your presence evolves. You no longer fade into the background. You become the one who sets the emotional tone wherever you go. Let's wrap it all together with 5 unshakable principles of Machiavellian politeness. 1. Politeness must be earned, not handed out. You don't owe courtesy to people who breach your boundaries, steal your time, or hide behind passive hostility. You can be respectful, but don't offer them comfort. Comfort is a privilege. 2. Never use politeness to sidestep conflict. If avoiding confrontation means sacrificing your self-worth, it's not a victory, it's defeat. True strength is choosing your integrity over hollow approval. 3. Politeness is not the same as goodness. You can be virtuous without being warm. You can be ethical while remaining cold. You can be fair and still intimidating. Don't let surface-level society convince you that being pleasant equals being right. That's how manipulators thrive. 4. When unsure, choose silence. Silence has more power than any rehearsed courtesy. It speaks on your behalf. It communicates presence without needing explanation. And it forces others to handle the discomfort, not you. 5. If they confuse your kindness for softness, respond with absence. The most powerful Machiavellian move isn't a confrontation, it's removal. Not out of spite, but to make one thing unmistakable, access to you is not guaranteed. Now you might wonder, how do I wield this power without losing my humanity? What if I overcorrect? What if I become distant in moments that don't deserve it? Here's the answer. You're not throwing politeness away. You're just removing it from your default identity. Right now, you've been conditioned to be polite instinctively, like a servant lowering his head when a master walks by, or like prey, avoiding the gaze of a predator. That isn't kindness, it's conditioned compliance. Machiavelli's brilliance wasn't in rejecting warmth, it was in recognizing when warmth becomes a liability. He would say, extend politeness to those below you, but never let them confuse it for softness. Be civil to your peers, but only when respect flows both ways. Be courteous to those above, but only as a tactic while you prepare to take their place. For everyone else, silence is your strategy. Think of it as a mental shift from automatic to intentional. Politeness should not spill out by reflex. It should make people pause and wonder, why is he being polite to me? What happens if I cross his line? Has he ever gone cold on someone else? When others ask those questions about you, you're no longer simply likable. You become unpredictable. You become a variable. And variables are what Machiavelli admired most because they keep others on edge. You don't need them confused, just uncertain, because uncertainty prevents control. They're too busy calculating your next move to try and box you in. Then there's the final moment when it's time to abandon politeness altogether. In every power exchange, there's a tipping point, a moment when someone ignores your subtle boundaries, pushes one step too far, offers a smile while slipping quiet disrespect across the table. That's when most people still cling to diplomacy. Still try to preserve harmony, still play nice, but yeah, you sever the connection. No argument, no clarification, no reaction. You become motionless. You fall silent. You empty the room of warmth and let them sit with the impact of misreading you. And in that silence, they feel it. This is someone I can't manipulate like the others. That internal realization, wordless yet unforgettable, is your signature as a true Machiavellian. Here's the final truth. Politeness is a tool, not your identity. You weren't put here to be agreeable at all costs, not to dilute every decision, not to smile through every slight, not to soften your strength for others' comfort. You're here to create, to lead, to take up space and make others recalibrate around you. If your calm is misunderstood as coldness, let them misunderstand. If they call you harsh, distant, or intimidating, let them. They're confusing precision for cruelty, and that's their issue, not yours. Your issue is this: every time you act polite when you should be direct, every time you say it's fine when it isn't, every time you force a smile when you should hold your ground, you're training them how to treat you. Worse still, you're training yourself to believe your power is negotiable. It isn't. So offer politeness when it's earned. And when it's not, embody Machiavelli. Let silence speak in your place. Let your stillness carry weight. Let tension do what politeness never could: show them exactly who they're dealing with. Because in the end, they won't remember what you said. They'll remember how you made them feel when you stopped saying anything at all.